Good morning, committee, and welcome to members of the public joining us today, both in person and online. This is the 23rd of February 2023 meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, which is one of the 3 area-based planning committees of the Dorset Council. Our area remit covers the previous Weymouth and Portland Borough Council and most of the previous West Dorset District Council areas. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public are invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Members of the public are allowed to record or film any part of the meeting. However, they should conform to the protocol for filming and audio recording of public council meetings and not distract the proceedings. Those filming should only focus upon those directly involved in the conduct of the meeting. The meeting is also being live streamed, and a copy of the recording will be available to view on the council website after the meeting. No fire alarm tests are expected. If the fire alarm sounds, can all present leave the building as quickly as possible by way of the closest exit and follow the directions to the nearest assembly point away from the civic offices. Public amenities can be located in the foyer of County Hall, adjacent to the entrance. Members of the public who have given advance notice of their wish to speak on an application will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor David Shortell, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee, and my Vice Chairman is Councillor Bill Pipe. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members and members of the public.
Now I'd like to introduce other members of the committee. Councillor Dave Bolwell. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Good morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Susan Cocking.
Apologies, Chairman.
Yep, got that one. Councillor Jean Dunseth. Good morning, Jean. Good morning to you. Councillor Nick Ireland. Good morning, Nick. Good morning. Councillor Paul Kimber. Good morning, Paul. Good morning. Councillor Louis O'Leary. Good morning, Louis.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Kate Weller. Councillor Sarah Williams. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning to you. And Councillor John Worth. Good morning, John. Good morning to you. Officers involved in the meeting include Anne Collins, Area Manager, Western and Southern Team, Hannah Massey, our lawyer. Morning, Anna. Bob Burton and Thomas Wild, Senior Planning Officers. Good morning. Charlotte Loveridge, Planning Officer. Good morning, Charlotte. Kate Williams, Conservation and Design Officer. Elaine Tibble, Senior Democratic Services Officer. And Josh Kennedy, Democratic Service Apprentice. Good morning, Josh. Good morning to you all. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies. To confirm any apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yep, so we've got apologies sent from Councillors Susan Cocking and Kate Weller.
Thank you for that. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does any member have any declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination regarding any item on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, in relation to item 5D, I will leave the room. I am the joint applicant. I need to make a statement in relation to 5A on the agenda. Someone has contacted our legal services to claim that I am predetermined regarding this item. This claim is based on a collection of public statements I have made in support of renewable energy and its local generation, and my membership of Transition Town Bridport, which has declared its support for this application. Even though when this claim first appeared some months ago, I was a registered director of Transition Town Bridport, I was completely unaware of this support. Jonathan Mayer's advice at the time was to resign as Director of Transition Town Bridport, which I did. He said that this would mitigate the claim of predetermination. However, the same claim has reappeared. I am a Green Party councillor. The people who voted for me expect me to speak on issues like the value of renewable energy. However, I am very careful to make no public comment on any particular application. No matter how much I may support an issue in general, like the installation of solar PV and wind turbines and the value of local energy generation, that does not mean I support any and all applications. My potential support will always be site-specific. All of these comments were made before I had seen details of this particular application. In fact, it's only since the publication of our agenda that I have seen those details. I do not believe the accusation of predetermination applies. If it does, then the implication is that I need to remain politically silent on many issues, and that, as far as I'm concerned, undermines democracy. I will, however, in the last instance, take the advice of our legal officer. If she thinks I'm predetermined, I will not take part in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Clayton. I'm going to now refer to our legal officer, Hannah Massey. Over to you.
As we've discussed, Councillor Clayton, I think it's the issue is not necessarily the general statements that you've made, as you said, which are not specific to the site, which relate to local energy production and green energy in general. It may be that a reasonable person would think that because of your position as Director of Transition, sorry, what's the name of the organisation? Transition Town. Which you have, but it was only recently, I understand, that you resigned from that position. And whilst they made their public support for this application, you were still in that director role. So my advice, out of an abundance of caution, would be that you do not participate.
Thank you, Hannah, for that. Are you happy with that, Councillor Clayton? I appreciate that.
Do you have a point of order, Councillor?
As a point of clarification, I think the golden rule is if you think you're too tight, too close to those organisation, then you should declare an interest. I always believe that to be the golden rule of declaring an interest.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Okay, all right. So we'll take it that, in fact, you'll be withdrawing for that particular item. I'm afraid you do.
You can stay. Yes, right.
Okay, Councillor Bolwell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 5D, this came before Bridport Town Council a few weeks back, and at which point I was chair of that meeting. From my memory, I didn't take part in the discussion or vote, but in the absence of that, not because that wasn't minuted, I think for clarity it'd be better if I left the room and didn't speak on that particular matter. I also have another meeting to attend, which means that when I leave for item 5D, I will not return for item 5E, if that's okay. Thank you.
I understand, Councillor Bolwell. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to declare an interest on the second item, which is the one for the area on Monmouth Avenue, Weymouth Rugby Club. The applicant is my mum's cousin's daughter. So she's my third cousin, but Littlemore and Weymouth being the place it is. I will therefore not be taking part in the debate or on the vote, just for caution, and I have to leave for a funeral at 11:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary.
Councillor Williams, Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. On item 5D, I've been advised to make a statement that I am no longer on Bridport Town Council Planning Committee. I've taken no discussion on this item, and therefore I'm not predetermined, so I will be within the debate.
Your point of view is accepted. Do we have any other declarations of interest? Thank you for that. Item 4 of the agenda is public participation. Only those people who have registered to speak with Democratic Services will be invited to address the committee. The order of speaking will normally be the first 3 in objection and the first 3 in support, including the applicant or agent. If a ward councillor who is not a member of the committee wishes to address the committee, they will be allowed 3 minutes to do so. Neither the objector or the supporters will normally be questioned, except to clarify a point of fact by the chairman. All written statements received by Democratic Services have been passed to members prior to this meeting. Right, we'll now come on to item 5 on the agenda, planning applications. We have 5 planning applications before us today for consideration. A comfort break of 5 or 10 minutes will be taken as and when is requested. I've just been informed that I've missed item 3 on the agenda, and that's to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of January 2022. Has all members received a copy of those minutes?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. If members are content, I will sign those minutes as a true record of what took place. Apologise about that. Okay, as I said, we've got 5 planning applications before us today for consideration. A comfort break of 5 and 10 minutes will be taken as and when is requested. The first item is item 5A, application number PFUL 2022-05708. And that's the land west of Antrim Road, Dottery, Dorset, DT6 5HS. The installation of ground-mounted photovoltaic PV units on galvanized steel table framework arranged into 12 arrays with inverter and GPR enclosure, fencing, cameras, revised access, landscape, and biodiversity mitigation. And this particular application is being presented by Mr. Bob Burden, the case officer. Over to you, Bob, to introduce the item.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Initially, to locate members, the site is located just to the north of Bridport, on the just off the B Road, which is the Bridport to Broad Windsor Road. Dottery Road is here, you see. and Atrium Road runs off in this direction here towards Marshwood, and our site is defined by the red line here, and part of an arable cropped field here. There's a covered Wessex Water Reservoir just to the south of the site here, and public rights of way, which I'll point out from the next slide. So that the site is basically in this part of the field here. You can see obviously it's a field that's been ploughed with the chalk being evident there. So it's that sort of part of the site we're looking at. So the B Road is there and that Atrium Road is here. There's a public right-of-way footpath that runs along the southern edge adjacent to the site just here, and then which crosses off. You can just see a faint line across the field there going off in that direction there. And there's also a footpath. The nearest footpath is just up here, running up that direction northward. In terms of significant items close to the site, Dottery House is located here. There are a number of other properties just in a linear fashion along the Dottery Road there. Collie Farm, a listed building, is over here. And in detail on the site is defined by the red line here. The security deer-proof type fencing is the pink line here within the site, and the arrays, each of the arrays are shown here, showing each in blue and light blue, the distribution and alignment of those arrays, obviously generally orientated southward. The existing vehicular access, which would be slightly modified, is here off Atrium Road, and an area of hard standing would be created there, together with entrance gates to access the site. In terms of landscaping, there are several threads to that, several dimensions to it. A native hedgerow would be planted along the edge on the higher bank above Atrium Road here. There are some bits of hedgerow there at the moment, but it's very intermittent in its form, Chairman. There's an established native hedgerow with a few hedgerow trees along this boundary here. There would be a linear woodland copse established here, small area there, again there, and then the dark green are areas of sort of shrub planting in those areas there, plus a proposed hedge on this edge of the site adjacent to the public right-of-way there. So the landscaping sort of forms in effect a sort of habitat mosaic with a different types of vegetation forming a different strata on different parts of the site, but obviously the emphasis of the landscaping is to screen from views from the north and the west in particular, and to some extent from Atrium Road by the hedgerow here as well. So just to show you the array details themselves, typical sort of formation of them, site dropping away slightly. Arrays would be 2.52 metres above ground level with 0.6 metres gap between the bottom of the array and the ground level. And on the site there'd be a 2 metre high cabinet, normal sort of provision for solar panel array associated structures. The stock-proof deer fencing would be 2.4 metres high. There would be CCTV cameras up to 3 metres just above that, together with entrance gates, and also timber gates would be used at the point of vehicular access into the site rather than the existing metal gate. So I'm just going to take you through context in terms of a few photographs. This is on the Dottery Road looking northwards towards the Broad Windsor direction. That's Dottery House, which is the closest residential property to the site. And this is the entrance to Atrium Road here. And that's just looking the other way, looking southwards. So Atrium Road is there, and we're looking back towards the Bridport direction there, just give you an idea of the nature of that B Road. And then this is the entrance into Atrium Road. You can see the Wessex Water covered reservoir and associated ancillary building on the site there. And then as we progress along Atrium Road, this is the entrance to the site here, existing gate into the site there. And you'll see we have this high banking on the side of the site here, with sort of a lot of bramble and sort of very intermittent hedging, which, as I said, would be replanted, would be reinforced with a new native hedgerow in that location. And just moving on along Atrium Road, give you a bit more of a feel for that. There are a number of passing places on Atrium Road, although it's a relatively narrow lane. There are quite a few passing places for vehicles to pass. And again, our site is just over the back, over the top of the bank here. So continuing on down Atrium Lane, another passing place you can see there. And then turning, having stood down here and turned through 180 degrees, looking back up the way you've come, that's the view back up. And you see some of the hedging existing there, which would be reinforced and added to. So this is from the public right-of-way I mentioned to the north of the site, looking back southwards. So Atrium Road is down just here within these raised hedges, and our site is actually in this area here. You can see part of the land just slopes slightly down to the north there, so it's in the area here. So these photos were taken just a few weeks ago, middle of winter, so obviously in the summer that would be more effectively screened, but you can see at the moment slight glimpsed views through there to the site in winter. And this is actually on the site itself. This photo is looking westwards. You can see the line of the public right-of-way there, snaking along the edge of the site before it disappears off in that direction. Just the outline of hills in the distance you can pick up there. And then looking northward from the vehicle access into the site, and our site is basically in this sort of area here of the northern part of the field. And you can see high ground distant away in the hills to the north there. And these are on the northern boundary of the site, you can see the hedgerow trees here, which obviously as the slope falls away, those are on that alignment. So here, this is from the southwestern corner of the site, and that's the path that runs down the hill away from the site towards the Cymene Valley. Just to give you an idea of that. And then having got down to this point and then turned round to look back the way you've come, that's the route back up to the site. So our site, the Wessex Water Reservoir site, is in here behind these trees, and our site is basically on this higher land here, running along that part of the field. That's the area effectively of where it would be. So this is just having walked up to the top there, so this gives a clearer view of the location, which is north of where my pointer's running there, that part of the field. So quite a sort of level, sort of elevated siting within that field. You can just see glimpses of some of the dwellings on the other dwellings on Dottery Road, beyond a small field beyond the other side of Atrium Road there. A few telegraph poles, overhead lines you can see in the area. And then just a shot, this is our site in here. Dottery House there, showing the relationship there with the site just over beyond the road. And is the reservoir, close over the reservoir site adjacent to the south boundary of the site, and with the ancillary pump building there. So then again from the access, just looking due north, this one, I walked along at the edge of the field a bit, so it just picks up, as the slope falls away to the north a little bit, just picks up the boundary of the native hedgerow and trees at the northern end of the site there. And then just turning to the east, that gives a view of the nearest dwellings on Dottery Road, a field beyond Atrium Road, which is here. And this was just taken from the northern end of the site, looking back. So our site, again, this part of the field, far part of the field here. And then right back, Dottery House there. And our site is this part of the field, this upper part of the field. So main planning issues, principal development is renewable energy is supported by COM11 of the adopted local plan. Obviously, a number of other issues that we do need to consider. The effect on the area of outstanding natural beauty, obviously being a lot of input from AONB landscape officers and from our own landscape officer, which is explored in some depth in my report. And my feeling is, having looked at the impacts together with the mitigation, because the main impacts are more local than distant, particularly the rights of way and from Atrium Road. I think with the landscaping, the effect on the area of outstanding natural beauty would be acceptable in my view. The effect on residential amenity, I looked at that quite carefully, given a number of representations on that point. And obviously the structures themselves are relatively modest, 2.52 metres high, so they don't have any sort of major overbearing impact on properties nearby. Obviously, the cameras is something that was raised as a point of concern, the CCTV cameras. We would ensure with a condition, if this were approved, that the location orientation of those would be controlled so that they don't look towards residential properties. There would also be a construction traffic management plan for the construction phase to help control that in terms of amenity aspects. And also there's a condition for any plant installation on the site to satisfy appropriate acoustic standards, which is included in the list of conditions at the end. Agricultural land, it's purported that the site is within a broader zone of potentially grade 1 agricultural land. We can't be actually specific that this is definitely grade 1 agricultural, because you'd actually have to do sort of detailed site surveys and soil surveys actually on the site itself. But as I've explored in a paragraph on that, it's clearly very productive agricultural land, but this, unlike, say, a residential development, does not permanently take it out of agricultural production. Indeed, it is possible that sheep could be grazed on the site while the panels are there, given there's 0.6 of a metre gap between the base of the panel and the ground. And also, if the application were approved and implemented after the 40-year period, if it was still there and the panels were then removed, quite a lot of the land could then be returned to more intensive agricultural production. So that's the message on that. Impact on heritage assets. Collie Farm, I mentioned to the north, is 113 metres away from the site. That's the nearest listed building to the site. There are several other listed buildings, but they are significantly further away and not detrimentally affected in terms of their settings by this really quite contained, relatively small-scale solar panel scheme. Biodiversity, a detailed biodiversity mitigation plan has been submitted, and that's been certified by a natural environment team. So if this were approved, that would be specified as part of the conditions, together with landscape and ecological management plan, to ensure there was compatibility between further details of landscaping and also the ecological, maximising the ecological net gain on the site. Highway safety, the Highway Authority have been consulted. They've looked at the scheme and they have no objection to it. There is a construction traffic management plan including these conditions, and part of that would obviously ensure that during the construction phase, deliveries would be from the B road rather than the minor road which comprises Atrium Road. So the B road is only just adjacent to the site entrance, so that's quite a suitable means of delivering materials for installing. Chairman, on that point, I recommend approval with conditions as listed in my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burden. I also invite John Davies to address the committee. John, please speak directly into the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Over to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. There are 3 key facts to be considered in this case. The scheme does not meet the test of conserving and enhancing the AONB. This is ultimately the conclusion of all three of the key experts in the case, the Senior Landscape Officer, the AONB Landscape Officer, and the Case Officer. The AONB has the highest status of protection, and the Council must meet its statutory obligations. All three experts also agree there will be significant local adverse effects that will not be fully mitigated. Dottery residents will lose the visual amenity of the uninterrupted panoramic views that we're seeing here from footpath W315. These will be replaced by, to quote the AONB Landscape Officer, a quasi-industrial installation. And you can see from the photos we've been seeing, this is no place in this rural environment. The Case Officer states there is no impact on our residential amenity, but this is just not true. The proposed location is on high-quality, productive agricultural land, land which meets the classification of best and most versatile. In line with the NPPF and the guidance from Natural England, land classification should be used to assess applications, and decisions should avoid loss of BMV land. Given these facts, the decision essentially becomes one of necessity and public interest. The necessity of this scheme in this location has not been demonstrated. It is stated that the scheme will make a useful contribution for renewable energy provision, but no qualification of that is made. Dorset is already in the top 15% of local authorities, generating enough renewable energy for 150,000 homes. This contribution of this scheme would only be an increase of 0.0005%. In 2021, Dorset reduced its carbon emissions by over 5,000 tonnes. This scheme would represent a saving of only 0.002% of our annual usage. This is the same amount of carbon emissions as a single plane flying from Bournemouth to Paris, which will be offset for a payment of £1,500. No consideration has also been given by the Case Officer to the economic loss of 1 hectare of productive farmland. The applicant also suggests no other suitable sites can be found. However, the site of Morbath, which is not on BMV land, has no public right-of-way, was shown as a viable site in their own feasibility study. DCE, the applicant, has also publicly stated they have 9 other locations in Dorset where they would like to replicate this scheme. In March 22, this committee rejected an application for an identically sized solar array at Highlands End Caravan Park. The application was rejected because the benefits did not outweigh the, to quote, significant adverse local visual effects and the impact on special qualities. We have exactly the same significant adverse local effects here, and the benefits are essentially the same. It's the same size of solar panels. We therefore only ask that the committee is consistent in its application of the planning rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. I now invite Clive Fairclough, who's speaking on behalf of Chrissy Proctor, to address the committee. You also have 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman. In the applicant's feasibility study for this application, 2 sites, as we've been heard, were analysed. Regarding the Dottery site, the report says the site is within an area which is defined as excellent quality Grade 1 land. Now, this puts it at the top of the tree for best and most versatile land. To put that in context, not only is such land very scarce locally, it's very scarce nationally. What do we mean by very scarce? Strutton Parker, the long-established agents, tell us that in England it is 3%. We're talking about just 3% of land being Grade 1 in the whole of England, and this Dottery land is part of that 3%. Furthermore, if permission is granted, this land is not being taken out of use for the odd year, it's being, or as part of land rotation, but for 40 years. At a time when food security has never been more at the forefront of global sensitivity, surely this cannot be in the global, national, or local interest. The Case Officer says it's not substantial. It is in a context of 3%. An idyllic image of a few sheep grazing from time to time on patches of deteriorating quality grass where sunlight is captured before reaching it for 40 years is no substitute. And still furthermore, according to government statistics on the DEFRA website, updated December 21, the UK produces just 54% of food for UK plates. It notes that this is trending downwards from a peak of about 78% in the mid-1980s. It notes too that, quote, competition for land is part of the increasing threat to high-quality arable land. This proposed array is part of that threat. This dottery land is not just any land. This land is part of England's 3% Grade 1 most versatile land. The applicant's paperwork says they have the capacity to pursue just one site of the size of this application. The second site in the feasibility study is also on the Symonsbury estate, apparently not so visible, with power line access in an adjacent field, which, quote, lends to inexpensive connection to the grid. It is also, quote, on Grade 3 land, although it's not noted as to whether it's Grade 3A or B, and you'll know the difference between those two things. And he goes on to say that there is an abundance of Grade 3 land within the district. Cost analysis is similar to Dottery. In fact, it's £580 cheaper. I'm not saying that the array has to be on any local land, but wish to underline that there is a viable alternative to taking Grade 1 land out of its best use. The value per se of solar power is not in dispute. What is, however, is how essential that is in relation to the impact when sited on this field. Thank you for listening, and I urge you not to grant permission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fairclough. Okay, and now I also invite John Dean to address the committee. Again, you have 3 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Dean.
Chairman, as we know, this site is in an AONB, where the council has a statutory duty to, quote, to have regard to the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the landscape, unquote. And NPPF 176 says that the great weight must be given to the conservation and enhancement of the Dorset AONB. At the same time, the NPPF 158 says the council should approve applications for renewables, but only, quote, if the impacts are and can be made acceptable, unquote. This proposed 1 hectare solar panel array, which is described as being of, quote, quasi-industrial appearance, unquote, will have harmful impacts on the AONB. As stated by your AONB landscape officer, it will result in significant, quote, localized adverse landscape and visual effects due to the nature of the countryside location that has been selected, unquote. They include adverse landscape and visual effects on views from public footpath W315, immediately to the south of the site, a section of Antrim Road passing the site, and from public footpath W36/28, 250 metres north of the site. While the proposed landscaping may mitigate to some extent these adverse landscape and visual impacts, your AONB landscape officer recognises that they are, quote, unlikely to fully mitigate, unquote, through the measures proposed. In addition, your senior landscape officer recognises that the proposed landscaping would effectively, quote, enclose, unquote, what is currently open land in the AONB, with the introduction of, quote, uncharacteristic species and vegetation patterns into an otherwise open, locally elevated parcel of land, which at present offers opportunities for panoramic views over the countryside, including Comas and Jan's Hill. In short, The adverse impacts that this solar array on the AONB are not, quote, made acceptable as required by NPPF. The result would be the creation of an alien, uncharacteristic, screened enclosure of land, which currently forms part of an open plateau in the AONB. In summary, the proposed development would not achieve sustainable development as required by the NPPF. It would be in the wrong place, contrary to the, quote, economic objective, NPPF 8A, and would not, quote, protect and enhance, unquote, the natural landscape as visual quality of the AONB, contrary to the, quote, environmental objective, unquote, NPPF 8 Charlie. For these reasons, the committee is asked to refuse the application.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. I invite Pete West, the Secretary of Energy Local Bridport, to address the committee. Please speak directly into the microphone. Again, you have 3 minutes. Over to you, Mr. West.
I'm very pleased to address the committee in support of this planning application. It's much more complex than what it must first... Sorry, it's just working. Oh. Okay.
No, that one's working.
Sorry? Oh, sorry, is it working?
That one is. The red light.
The red light, okay. Sorry, can we start again? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chair. So as I was saying, I'm very pleased to address the Planning Committee in support of this planning application, which is much more complex than what it might first appear. My name is Pete West. I'm a volunteer, Secretary of Energy Local Bridport Cooperative. Energy Local Bridport Cooperative represents householders in the Bridport area who would like to purchase low-cost renewable electricity using the existing grid. As a background to the planning application, the applicant, Dorset Community Energy, is registered as a not-for-profit community benefit society. It was first registered in 2013, and since then has raised over £1.5 million from local people to install solar panels on schools, hospitals and community buildings. Those buildings currently save about £80,000 a year from this low-cost electricity, and there's been no significant problems over the last period of 10 years. That's the applicant. Okay, in late 2019, Dorset Community Energy developed a partnership with national energy company Octopus Energy, who offered to supply local electricity at low cost from the existing Solway Ash wind turbine to householders in Bridport through the cooperative. Following a public meeting at the beginning of 2020, over 3 years ago now in Bridport Town Hall, there was a massive support for the project. We wanted 50 householders to get the wind energy, 90 householders signed up within a month. Therefore, Dorset Community Energy decided to be able to supply additional householders. They would look into the opportunity to add some solar panels. Octopus Energy advised it's not possible to have rooftop solar panels supplying a building and also supplying the grid and householders. It had to be ground-mounted solar panels. Therefore, Dorset Community Energy spent a year, £25,000, investigating 9 possible sites. They needed a grid connection, needed landowner agreement in principle, the heads of terms, and ideally to be screened. Out of the 9 sites, this Dottery Close was selected as the best fit to all these criteria. So, this is what is significant, which might not have been clear to you. The local benefits from this development are substantial. Based on previous experience, each of the participating householders, there'll be 200 householders could be supplied from this acre of solar panels, would save £100 a year each on electricity bills, which is a total saving of £500,000 into the local economy over a period of 20 years. Financial benefits are massive, and the Energy Local Bridport Cooperative, as a not-for-profit organisation, would directly encourage householders on low income and perhaps households who can't put PV on their own roofs to join the cooperative so they can purchase electricity themselves. The existing Energy Local Bridport Cooperative is absolutely groundbreaking. It's the first example in England of local supply of low-cost renewable electricity to the grid. It's received widespread national publicity, including features in the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the Times, Radio Solent, and Meridian TV. And I would ask the committee to support this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. West. I invite Malcolm Drew to address the committee. Again, Mr. Drew, you have 3 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Malcolm Drew, I'm a Bridport resident. I am a member of Energy Local that Pete's mentioned. I draw some of my domestic energy from the Solway Ash wind turbine. I have an electrical engineering background, and I'm speaking of the benefits of local generation and of this site. Prior to 1926 and the establishment of the national grid, electrical energy was generated and distributed locally. At that time, centralised generation and interconnection of power stations made economic sense, but at the expense of transmission losses which still remain with us today. A dreadful waste, a loss in the order of 10% of the energy input to the national system, a system which is recognised to be stretched to supply our current demands. For the sake of the environment, our children, our grandchildren, we can and must do better, as recognised by Dorset Council's own declaration of a climate and environmental emergency. Technologies such as wind and solar generation were not available to our forebears. But this project, with your sanction, offers the opportunity to supply low-cost electricity to low-income local households, reducing the waste of distribution over long distances and easing the load of Bridport on the national grid. The present Energy Local Club, one of 8 managed by Octopus Energy, has been part of the mix, enabling me to reduce my total domestic energy cost, that is electricity, gas and wood fuel, to below £40 a month. I imagine you'll all be well aware of your own personal energy costs. That seems good to me. I would like to see that available to others in the community. Solar PV is a low-maintenance technology, so there will be little regular service traffic to this site, which has the potential to generate reliably for many years. As can be seen from the planning application, the visual impact of the site will be reduced by sensitive use of native plants, which, with the planting of shade-tolerant grasses beneath the panels, will provide a haven for local wildlife, an oasis within an otherwise monoculture desert, an enhancement of biodiversity, again in pursuit of Dorset Council's own declared objectives. In conclusion, this site, as proposed, will provide improved wildlife habitat, lower cost electricity for local residents without the input from fossil or nuclear energy supply. All of this, it will also reduce the load on the national grid and improve the resilience of the UK energy supply. All this in exchange for sacrificing a very small area of monoculture crop-producing land. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Drew. I also invite Lisa Jackson of Jackson Planning Limited, who is the agent, to address the committee. Again, you have 3 minutes. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, members. Chairman. The delivery of renewable energy projects is fundamental to facilitate the country's transition to a low carbon, as set out in the national policy in the Climate Change Act, which is a legal requirement. This is clearly identified in section 14 of the National Planning Framework, where the policies seek to increase the use and supply of renewable and low-cost energy. And in particular, I draw your attention to paragraph 156, which states, local planning authorities should support community-led initiatives for renewable and low-carbon energy, including developments outside areas identified in their local plans. This is such a scheme. There is also clear local support for this project, reflected in your recently made Bridport local plan in policy CC4. This is a positive policy supporting neighbourhood renewable energy schemes. Dorset's council's planning policies support the scheme, in particularly COM10, and this is replicated in the emerging Dorset local plan. Your council also declared a climate and ecological emergency in May 2020, and this is a material consideration in your consideration today. Your council's stated position is that renewable energy capacity must be increased by a factor of 60. In practice, this means sites within sensitive areas, including the AONB, will need to be permitted in order to meet the requirements for renewable energy within Dorset, especially given the extensive coverage of extensive areas within the county. When I was asked to act for this project, I reviewed the comprehensive pre-application advice from officers, and whilst I could understand the natural resistance to development within the AONB, however, I felt the scheme could be made acceptable and ultimately supported if it had a better approach to landscape mitigation. So the landscape proposals were expanded significantly from the pre-application stage to ensure that a landscape-led design to the mitigation was taken to achieve comprehensive screening from the wider area. And following negotiation with officers, additional hedge planting is now proposed adjacent to the footpath, and the perimeter fencing has been altered to the more rural post and wire fencing. Concern has been raised by the other speakers about the loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. However, this is a temporary and minor impact. And I'd like to draw your attention to two recent appeal decisions, both made this year, that have confirmed that the loss of small parcels of best and most versatile agricultural land in solar decisions should be attributed minor harm in the planning balance. In Essex, a decision this month allowed 2 hectares of solar on best and most versatile land in the Greenbelt. And last month in Cornwall, an appeal allowed a size of a similar size of best and most versatile, which the inspector described as very small. Incidentally, the same size as this proposal. The inspector confirmed a reduction in agricultural output was reversible and that there was no significant adverse impact upon the agricultural industry or food production. These 2 recent appeal precedents show that in this case, the temporary loss of a very small area of best and most versatile land has been outweighed by the production of low-cost renewable energy, which has more substantial benefits in favour of the proposal. I would ask that you similarly consider the benefits of this proposal significantly outweigh the minor and temporary harms and support the officer's recommendation of approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the members or the chairman about the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Before I return to Mr. Burton to respond with any salient points you may wish to clarify, can I ask Councillor Clayton if you wish to make a statement as ward member? I call on Bob Burton to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Davis commented that about the comment about the scheme would not preserve or enhance the AONB, and obviously that's a key factor for us to consider in this. However, it's got to be balanced against the other material planning considerations, and obviously in this case we have the generation of renewable energy for relatively local people. We have an extensive landscaping scheme which would to a large extent mitigate the harm to this locality to the extent that I would support the application, and which would also by its very nature provide a variety of habitat types, so providing a habitat mosaic. So there are other considerations that need to be weighed in the balance, Chairman. As regards residential amenity, I do feel that the impacts are acceptable in residential amenity terms. As I said, that Dottery House on the plan here is the nearest residential property to the site. Its garden is relatively close there, but the property is a little further away. The structures are modest, would not be overbearing in any shape or form, in my view. Secondly, that the camera positions would not result in loss of privacy because we would have control over the positioning and orientation of those. And there is also a construction traffic management plan to help to mitigate impacts during the construction phase. So I'm at ease with the residential amenity impacts, Chairman. Regarding the necessity of the scheme not demonstrated, I would draw members' attention to advice in the NPPF, para 54. Councils do not expect applicants to justify the need for renewable energy development. So something for you to bear in mind there. Yes, councils do not expect applicants to justify the need for renewable energy development. Feasibility studies looking at other sites have been touched on, and those have been explored, and obviously there are a number of factors which affect the choice of a site. This one includes obviously a convenient point of connection to the grid amongst other considerations, but we are here obviously, Chairman, to consider the application before us on this particular site. The issue of the agricultural land, the quality of that, as I said, we can't be definitive. It's actually grade 1, this field. It's obviously a productive area for agricultural cropping, and I would point out that it is only a relatively small area that is taken out of intensive agricultural production, effectively. There is the potential, as I say, for sheep grazing on the site beneath the panels. There is also the potential, as it's a reversible development, for much of the site to be returned to more intensive agricultural production in the future if the panels are removed. As regards the further comments on the landscaping issue, you'll have gathered from my report that the AONB landscape officer was less opposed to this because the impacts are more local, and much of that would be, in his view, mitigated by appropriate landscaping on the lines of what we have before us today. I do appreciate, obviously, that our own council's landscape officer has maintained their objection, and the reasons and the considerations of that are set out in my planning balance, in particular, of the report, Chairman. It's fair to say that as one objector mentioned, that the landscaping would sort of enclose the site in a way. And clearly, from the public footpath along the southern edge of the site, the landscaping and the panels would affect views north in particular and westwards. But once walking along this right of way, once you get to this point, then much more of those views will open up. And as you go on the public right of way down to this field, then you get much more of the views to the north as well. So it's only a relatively modest, about 230 metres of section of the right of way that is very directly affected by this. And I think, Chairman, that concludes the comments I'd like to make at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Okay, we'll go on. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? I understand we've got a couple of people who are wishing to ask technical questions, and I'm going to start off with the Vice Chairman, Councillor Bill Pipe.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 16, we have point 6, which is the description of the development, Mr. Burden. There it says it's 0.12 hectares. Now, 2 of the 3 speakers who oppose the application have both quoted it as being 1 hectare. Where are they reading this that I haven't been able to read? Because this is an inflation of a factor of 8, which is quite considerable.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. The total site area within the red line is 0.9 of a hectare. However, the actual area of the panels, as you can see, is much more contained within that red line, you see. So that's why there's a smaller figure applicable to the actual area of the panels themselves. Obviously, there is landscaping that should be carried out to the periphery, and also there is the safeguarding of the water main, which has to have a 4-metre buffer either side, which has to remain free of built development, which explains the difference between the actual area of the panels and the actual total site area, Chairman.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, thank you. First question is, what is the lifespan of these panels? And number two is, if it was required that, wanted to be taken out and removed, how difficult is that? And, what is the sort of, what effect would that have if it wanted to be reverted back to, high-intensity agricultural land?
Chairman, yeah, the lifespan of these panels is anticipated to be up to 40 years. And clearly the permission may or may not last for that length of time in terms of the actual operation and use of the panels. But what we do have are planning conditions which, I should say here, for the decommissioning. You see conditions 3 and 4 here is for specifically addressing details of the decommissioning of the scheme and its site restoration. So there are submissions they would be required to provide to us, Chairman, to satisfy us on the way in which those panels are removed and how the site is restored. And clearly, there's an opportunity there for restoration of the productive agricultural land, at least in part, if not all.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are, if I take my last question first, because it follows on from Councillor O'Leary, are these panels, do they require a high level of maintenance? I'm thinking of those minor roads around the site. I mean, are the residents going to see daily new panels coming in throughout the 40 years? Or once it's built, it's built? That's the first point. The other question I have is, how high are these panels? Because we're saying it's it's interrupting the views around the area. And lastly, do we have any idea of possibility how many homes this could supply power to? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the maintenance of the panels, normally with these sort of solar parks, you get a visit, once, maybe twice a week by a van to check that everything is well. I mean, they're very, once they're installed, they're very low-key operations, really. Whilst the lanes, as I showed you, Atrium Road is a relatively narrow lane. It's got plenty of opportunities for passing places, but bear in mind that most of the traffic, to be honest, is likely to come from the B Road, which is only just thank you. Which is only just a short distance there. Right.
I'd like to bring the meeting to order now. Sorry for the impromptu comfort break. I appreciated it anyhow, but to continue. Right, okay, we're still on the closing, thank you, closing section of technical questions. Were there any more technical questions?
Councillor Worth, Chairman.
Councillor Worth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I might have missed this one, but I didn't see how far it was to the grid connection. It might have been in the report, but I missed that. And also, is there a sum of money going to be set aside for decommissioning? Because The developer may not be around in 40 years' time, so will there be a commuted sum taken for that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The point of connection, I believe, is immediately adjacent to the site. I think there are electric pylons, in the immediate locality. There are points close by, Chairman. And in answer to the question about a fund for decommissioning, no, there isn't a pot for that, Chairman, as such. But we have enforceable planning conditions regarding the appropriate decommissioning and restoration of the site, Chairman.
I appreciate there is planning conditions in place, but if there's no money available, then it will fall to the local authority to decommission in the future. If the developer has ceased trading or whatever, so I do have a slight concern about our vulnerability to a future cost in 40 years' time. Not that I'll be sitting on this council then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worth.
Before you come to...
I was just going to ask for any more technical questions before I ask Councillor.
Yeah, we have Councillor Bolwell, but I believe Anne would like to speak.
Okay.
.52 was the height, Chairman, and the approximate number of households served about 200. Yeah.
Councillor Bolwell, Chairman.
Councillor Bolwell.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was 84. But anyway. I read something 84 somewhere on that one, Paul, but maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, Bob. Chair, one thing that was baffling me or concerning me was the MPPF paragraph 112 states the economic benefit should be taken into account with preference being given to areas of poorer quality land. And I got a bit twitchy about this to being grade 1 or grade 1-ish. But obviously there's been recent developments on that score, and I think inspectors have made their point quite clear that it's just to be preferred. So I probably, Bob, unless there's, I take it you've taken that into account for the balance when you've made your decision. Sorry, hang on, I haven't switched off yet.
Right, is that, are we on?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I have deliberately in a section on a report, Chairman, there's a section on agricultural land, and I've explored in there the issue. As I said, we can't be conclusive that it's definitely grade 1, this field, because we don't have data to actually show that for this field. However, it's clearly in an area where the land is recognised as being highly productive and could well be grade 1. But in that context, there are several factors for the committee to bear in mind. First of all, it's only a small portion of the field that is taken out of production. Secondly, there is the opportunity to continue partial agricultural use through grazing on the site. And thirdly, there is the opportunity in the future to reinstate the agricultural use in a more intensive cropping form when the panels are removed, Chairman, for a large part of the site.
Do you wish to come back on that, or are you happy with the reply?
Happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Could I now ask Councillor Clayton to retire for a short while? Thank you. Before I open the debate, members, may I remind you to direct any questions or remarks through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. I also ask members to introduce themselves and speak directly into the microphones, which should be kept on mute when not speaking to preserve audio quality. I now open the debate to members.
Councillor Ireland, Chairman.
Councillor Ireland.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I've been making notes during the meeting, so I'm just going to go through them. They are in the order I've written them. But one of the things we tend to forget, and it hasn't really been mentioned today, briefly, tangentially, I guess, but basically we need more electricity. I was reading something the other day that we need to increase our electricity production by something like 50% by 2035. And there's lots of reasons you need to do that, but it's obviously to reduce our climate emissions, obviously. But gas boilers are being banned for new builds from 2025, so there will be a rapid increase in the number of heat pumps installed. They use electricity. We obviously have a ban on cars, petrol and diesel from 2030, I think. So we need a lot more EVs, and EVs are 25% of car sales these days. I think somebody's already mentioned that generation also needs to be more distributed rather than centralised due to transmission networks and things like that. And in the scheme of things, this is we've seen other sites which are considerably larger. This is 1 hectare, and the actual area of the solar panels is about an eighth of that, I guess. In the scheme of things, it's not very big, is it? And yeah, the generation is small, but generation is generation, and I think we need it. Solar doesn't work at night, but it does work well. It works even this time of year. Just for a matter of interest, I looked at my panels on my house because I can monitor them over my phone, and I got 7 kilowatts in my house, and they've already peaked at 3.6 kilowatts. And my house load is about 500 watts, so I'm generating 3 kilowatts myself to the grid. There you go. I don't think it's going to be noticeable at all, really. It's small, it's going to be shielded. Yeah, you can see it if you're walking along the path for about 30 metres, but then it's gone, you're back into open fields. You can restore them when it's gone. I think in answer to Councillor Coomber's question, I think the document mentions it's mounted on steel piles, which I guess is the equivalent of very large tent pegs. So, you can take those out. And, 40 years is nothing. It's infinitesimally small in the life of this planet. So I actually think, taking in the fact that AONB is, let's face it, everywhere in Dorset Council's area, and if we just used AONB as an excuse not to do anything, we'd never do anything. So there's a balance, and in my view, this particular site is perfectly acceptable, given it's time limited and we need electricity. So I'd like to propose we accept the recommendation, please.
Committee, we've got a proposal on the floor. Before I continue, do we have a seconder?
Councillor Kimber, Chairman.
Do you wish to speak at this point?
Councillor Worth, Chairman.
Councillor Worth.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, one of the objectors did say about food security being very important, which obviously it is, but I think energy security is equally important in this day and age. And also, they referenced a previous decision by a planning committee that refused a similar development. However, each development is taken on its merits, and there are always differences between those. So, bearing that in mind, I would be happy to support Councillor Ireland's proposal that we grant permission for this development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary, Chairman.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. When looking at these pictures, I did think of that saying, and did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's green mountainside? And I am concerned of the growing expansion of solar panels and non-agricultural use of farmland, particularly good farmland, which this clearly is. Someone who spent a lot of time on a farm as a kid, I can see a good field when I see one, and that is good agricultural land. So I do have concerns around the loss of high-quality agricultural land. I know the planning officer raised the fact that sheep can graze on there. Yes, they can. They do similar to the farm I know very well up on Buckland Ripers, where they graze amongst it. But I do have concerns over the visual impact of these things on the AONB. I'm not against solar panels at all. What I think our focus should be on is putting them on existing structures that are already built, as opposed to putting them on what is very good, both agriculturally and very good aesthetically, land. So therefore, I won't be supporting this proposal.
Councillor Kimber, you have indicated you wish to second this proposal. Do you wish to speak now?
All right, thank you. As long as I don't start echoing. Yeah, this I see as this application is lighter and darker shades of grey. Yes, we do have quite a heavy decision to make between what Councillor O'Leary says, the rural land, and upholding the rural land. And I think on this particular case, we've got to look at this as being the greater good. We all know, and we all know throughout going on to the national case, that we all know we need more power, more electricity, and Councillor Ireland's right that we've got to generate more power for our households, and many of our households are from what I was.
That concludes item 5A on the agenda. We're now going to proceed to the next application, which is item 5B, and that's application number PFUL 2022-03477, Weymouth Rugby Club, Monmouth Avenue, Weymouth, DT3 5HZ. And that's to retain the change of use from club parking to cafe area, placing a steel box container and fencing. I now invite Thomas Wild, the case officer, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. As we hear, the application is for Weymouth Rugby Club, Monmouth Avenue, Weymouth, for the retention and of the change of use from club parking area to cafe, placing of steel box container and fencing. The site... Sorry, do I need to speak up? Sorry. The site is more commonly known as the Caddy Shack. So it's a cafe being used as a cafe kiosk. The application has been brought to committee today as Dorset Council is the freehold owner of the land, and as reflected in the description of development, the application is made retrospectively. So this slide shows the site location outlined in red on the plan here. We have the Lodmore Country Park to the east and northeast of the site. I don't know what's happening there. And immediately to the north and northwest and southeast, we have the pitches of Weymouth Rugby Club, and then to the west and southwest, we have residential development. Zoomed in a little bit more on the site just to show the relationship between the red line boundary of the site, which includes the red line boundary includes the whole of the car park of the rugby club and the clubhouse itself, with the access in here from Monmouth Avenue. This is a recent aerial photograph of the site just to illustrate what's actually going on the site. We have the area that's actually concerned with the change of use here, which is there's a laying of hard standing, which is fenced off with a post and rail fence. The kiosk is in this part of the site, with the remainder of the rugby club and its car park retained. This is a slightly older aerial photograph just showing how the site was before the development took place. You can see that the part of the car park that was that is currently used for the Caddy Shack was not well used as a car park. It was quite overgrown with limited parking availability on that part of the site. So the application proposals are for the siting of the kiosk used for the preparation and sale of hot food and drink. That's it's a converted shipping container which has then been clad. The creation of the external seating area and rear service area for the kiosk, the change of use of the land, and just to note that the works are existing and unauthorised at present. This is just a bit more of a zoomed in aerial photograph just showing how the site operates. So we have the area of the use here. We have the kiosk shipping container in the eastern part of the site with the rear service area behind. We have the seating area to the front with park bench tables. There is a pedestrian entrance here from the Lord Moore Trail and a pedestrian entrance here from the car park to the rugby club. Customers of the Caddyshack do have access to the rugby club car park while the Caddyshack is open. Elevations of the kiosk and rear service area. So you can see the kiosk is, this is the elevation which is facing west with a hatch, serving hatch here, and to the rear there's a personnel door into the back, and the container has been clad in timber with the rear servicing area formed from prefabricated fence panels. This is an internal plan of the container, just showing how the use operates. So we have the serving area here with the hatch. There's a coffee machine, preparation area, and the small area for the preparation of hot food. There's a grill and some fryers. But the container doesn't have any mechanical extraction equipment at all on it at the moment. So this is a photograph of the site from the Lord Moore Trail by the pedestrian entrance that's been created. The boulders that are here were pre-existing, defining the edge of the rugby club car park previously. You can see that some additional hard standing has been laid down. That's just a hardcore that's been rolled and compacted, a post and rail fence, and the kiosk in the background of the photo there. This is the view from the rugby club car park. So you can see the exposed end of the shipping container, the prefabricated fence panels that have been used to form the rear servicing area, and the tables that are in the external seating area. This is the view from the Lord Moore Trail to the north of the site. So we have the container here, we have the seating area and the Lord Moore Trail, and then there's the residential uses, residential dwellings that are in this part of the site here. Moving on, we have these photos are taken on a weekend during a rugby training session, just to show the typical usage levels of the site. This was I think a Sunday morning training session, so there was plenty of car parking available on the site at that time. And there was some overflow parking being used. There's an overflow car park on the land to the north of the rugby club. So moving to the main issues of the application, in terms of the principle of the development, the site is located outside of the defined development boundary of Weymouth, but it is considered to be a well-located site, and it's not considered that the use undermines the commercial viability of any nearby facilities. And it is also considered that the use is complementary to the ongoing rugby club use. In terms of character and appearance, the structure is considered to be relatively low-key, and the visual impacts are wholly reversible. Essentially, you would simply take the shipping container away and remove any fencing, and the site would be restored to its previous state. Natural materials have been used, so the building doesn't appear as overly utilitarian. It has a relatively small scale, so it's not readily seen in wider views from the Lord Moore Trail. There's impact upon amenity. There have been objections received in respect of noise and odour, but it's noted that there's no objection from environmental health in respect of the application. During site visits, it has been observed that there are cooking smells of, can be discerned, but those are wind carried, and there aren't, as I said, any mechanical extract, or so that they're not really directed in any particular location. The noise on the site can be attributed primarily to customers in the external seating area, again with no external extraction equipment. And it was noted when visiting at the site at the weekend that the noise from the rugby club was more significant than any noise arising or attributable to the current the use applied for. In terms of access and parking, the existing club car parking, as I've mentioned, is available for customers and access, and the amount of parking available is considered acceptable for the use. Some representations have referred to informal car parking, parking of cars on land opposite the cafe to the west, but that is outside of the scope of this application, and it's not considered that that would justify refusal of planning permission in this instance. While the proposal does technically lead to the loss of land available for parking, in practice this doesn't prejudice the operation of the rugby club, and as we saw with the aerial photographs earlier in the presentation, the area that's being used was not actively or regularly used for car parking. It was quite overgrown, and so it wasn't really usable. It's therefore considered that the proposal complies with relevant policies for car parking, and it's also noted that there aren't any direct impacts on the public rights of way. Finally, we have an issue of flood risk. So some small parts of the site are within flood zones 2 and 3. The applicant has therefore provided a flood risk assessment, and that has confirmed that the majority of the site and areas used for the caddy shack in particular are outside of the flood risk area. They note that the container is an inherently flood resilient structure by the nature of its construction as a heavyweight steel box effectively, which could be removed, and it is resilient to flooding, and it's therefore considered that the scheme would remain safe from flooding and would not increase flood risk elsewhere. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions listing the approved plans as submitted by the applicant and restricting the opening hours of the site to 9 AM to 4 PM on any day. Just note that we don't have the 3-year commencement condition that we normally apply because the application was made retrospectively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Weld. Okay, I now invite Mr. Robert Smith to address the committee. Please speak directly into the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Smith.
I'm a retired operational firefighter who worked at a busy central London fire station serving the community for over 30 years. I moved to Weymouth to enjoy the slower pace of life and the fresh air in this beautiful part of the country. Having read the final report, I'm concerned over a number of inconsistencies. Point 1, it states the cabin is 34 metres from the nearest neighbour, where it is in fact 22 metres. Point 2, 15.9 claims prior to the development the land was used for parking and members of the public who utilised their vehicles for refreshments. This is completely contradicted in 15.13, where it claims the land was previously overgrown, waterlogged and unused. Point 3, in respect of section 15.2, stating the cafe has been in situ for 5.5 months, when it has been open for 10 months. The council were informed on the 13th of April 2022. Point 4, 15.11
states it does not significantly impact parking. Customers regularly park behind our fence, which was previously unused as it was overgrown. Although considered a separate issue, the council needs to consider stopping this, as this is not required for the business to operate. Point 5, 13.1. The site is outside the defined boundary and should be strictly controlled. Point 6. Under the impact on amenity, it states a 1.8 metre fence is sufficient to prevent significant overlooking, noise and smell. Well, this fence is behind the cafe, and therefore the opposite would be the case. It would push the smell towards you. My concerns are there is now a lack of privacy. We cannot sit in our garden without being overlooked and watched by customers and staff of the Caddy Shack. We feel as if we are constantly being looked upon, and this does not sit well with us and makes us feel uneasy. It's made worse as the land has been raised. The noise when the cafe is open is a continuous hubbub, and there is quite often groups of customers who are loud. On these occasions, conversations can be heard while sitting in our garden. The noise from customers parking their cars includes doors slamming and loud stereos playing. This is unreasonable and a substantial interference in the use and enjoyment of our property. Anti-social behaviour of staff and customers. We have been subjected to abuse. There have been occasions when customers have used our back fence as a toilet. The smells of food such as chips and burgers, 7 days a week, including public holidays. In summing up, we have always supported the rugby club. If retrospective planning was not used, we would have worked with the clubs to come to a compromise, which would have been beneficial to all parties. Simply moving the cafe back, changing the orientation 90 degrees, closing 1 day a week, or closing a couple of hours earlier. We don't want this business to close. We could not be any more reasonable. On another note, the cafe is often used by members of the public when it is closed. A simple gate stating this cafe is closed and should stop this and also add further security for the business. By the way, we live in Monmouth Avenue, not Monmouth Road. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I invite Linda Skelton to address the committee. Again, you have 3 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Skelton.
My name is Linda and I live in Monmouth Avenue. I am not against the Caddy Shack, just the position of it. The Caddy Shack was built over a very noisy weekend in April last year. When I first noticed the cafe, I immediately went to speak to the cafe owners and explained to them my worries about it being too close to homes and the public footpath. I asked if they could move it further away and they said no. Since then, even though we've had a lovely summer last year, I only sat in my garden once. This is due to the continuous noise, not just from the customers, but also the noise generated within the cafe. The Caddy Shack faces our homes, so all noises are generated towards us. There is no screening, only behind the Caddy Shack. Many customers park on the Lodmore Trail, only a few metres from our homes. The fumes can be quite toxic. There are now 3 large industrial-sized wheelie bins across the footpath opposite my garden with no screening. Between April and September, the rugby club is used as a camping site with up to 150 pitches a day. Many people use the cafe then. Due to its position, the noise seems to be amplified, so even more noticeable to residents. I would like you to step into my shoes for a few seconds. It's a lovely spring or summer's day, and you want to relax, enjoy your garden, and sit outside for breakfast, lunch, or a cup of tea with friends. This is not something I can do anymore. If this planning application is approved in the position it is now, 7 days a week I cannot sit in my back garden. Not just 1 day a week, but every day. Customers who use the cafe have commented that it's very good for their mental health. They come down to enjoy the benefits of sitting outside in fresh air, have a laugh with their family or friends, some come in groups. They go home feeling relaxed and return another day when it suits them. That's not a luxury I can have. Every day, 7 days a week, I cannot sit in my back garden to relax or my conservatory. It's just continuous noise. The cafe is built from a shipping container. As it was put over a weekend, then it should easily be moved in a weekend. Why should my mental health be impaired every single day? The cafe could still be successful if it was moved away towards the rugby club. The impact to its customers would be minimal, but this would have a massive impact on my life and that of my neighbours. This is a commercial business just a few metres away from the residential home. Excuse me. This is a commercial business. Is it really too much to ask that this cafe be moved away from its present position? Surely we should be able to sit in our own homes and gardens at some time during the day at our own convenience, not being dictated to by the opening and closing times of the Caddy Shack for as long as we live in Monmouth Avenue. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Skelton. I now invite Anne Hall to address the committee. You also have 3 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne, and thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting. We live opposite the Caddy Shack in Monmouth Avenue, and whilst we do not wish to discourage people from setting up a business and providing a popular amenity in the local area, we would like to share with you in which this impacts our everyday lives and the hope that in the future we can work together to create good relationships with our neighbours, the rugby club. My husband and I have lived here since 1986, and in the beginning the rugby club were excellent neighbours, always informing us of organised events which might be crowded or noisy, and inviting us to some of their planned social activities. In turn, we kept an eye out when no one was around on the site and always phoned the club or the police if we spotted any antisocial behaviour or suspicious activity. We continue to be vigilant and would respond appropriately. Therefore, we were very disappointed when we received no notification whatsoever when the project to erect the cafe began. Had we done so, we may have been able to offer a few constructive suggestions for consideration in terms of the impact on our houses nearby. Imagine our alarm when the first hint of a change of use was a digger cutting back hedges during the nesting season, adjacent to the area designated for the Caddy Shack. At the very least, prior notification of the intended plans would have been beneficial to good community relations. However, here are our main concerns. Whilst we do not want the cafe to close, we do question its orientation. At busy times, when we sit in our conservatory or garden, which runs the whole length of the cafe and parking area, the noise is quite disturbing. The converted shipping container acts as a sound box, which amplifies the voices of the staff speaking inside. We are sure that a 90-degree change of orientation would lessen the impact of the noise, as would moving the cafe further back in the car park. In addition to the noise issue, we are also aware of the cooking smells in the garden and through our conservatory windows. This certainly occurs when we have a northeasterly wind more often than a few times a year, as stated in the report. Whilst we agree that some of the Caddy Shack customers walk or cycle, there has certainly been an increase of traffic in the area, adding to the noise issue with car doors banging, etc. To conclude, thank you for listening to my concerns and feelings about this issue. I assure you that, again, we do not want to see a cafe which clearly customers enjoy closed down. We only hope that we can in future communicate with one another in a polite way and make changes where necessary for the well-being of us all in this lovely part of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I now call on Thomas Wild to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of very brief points. It was mentioned about inconsistencies in the report in respect of the distance between the Caddyshack and neighbouring properties, with reference to the measurement in the report of 34 metres. That was taken from our geographical information system, mapping system. So that is considered to be an accurate measurement of the distance between the kiosk and the dwellings. And I've just checked the measurement in terms of the distance between the kiosk and the boundary of neighbours, and that's approximately 30 metres at its closest point. So that's there are various measurements you could take, and you can measure boundaries to boundaries and things like that. So, but those are the measurements that I have taken. In terms of, there was a point about the 1.8 metre fence and it being behind the building. Behind the kiosk. I think that the point was probably not as clear as it could have been in the report, possibly, that also refers that there's a 1.8 metre fence along the boundaries of the dwellings as well. So the boundaries of those dwellings is not completely open, but it is defined by a fence. And just one final point about, couple points, the point about the inconsistency about the time that the structure's been in situ, that's correct. It has been longer than 5.5 months. I think that's just an error that was missed in an earlier version of the report, so from an earlier draft. So apologies for that. And finally, just to mention, there was reference to the camping activities that go on at the rugby club during the summer months. Those are outside of the scope of this application. Those carry on irrespective of the Caddyshack, and I think we can't really attribute any harm arising from those uses directly to this this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Oh, you. All right. Okay. I'll now, first of all, call on our Vice Chairman to ask a technical question. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Although there's no extraction system on this application, could that be conditioned so that if the application does get passed, then there is a way to extract the cooking smells and then release them through a relatively tall chimney? And also, what provision is being made for the foul waste disposal?
On extraction, I think it would be possible to, if the committee were minded to impose a condition that required details of an extraction solution to be provided within a certain amount of time of a decision being made, or alternatively to defer subject to those details being received. And in respect of foul drainage, I'll just pick up on the drawings actually. The foul drainage is actually limited to anything from the sinks, from washing up and things like that. And they have 2 large water tanks that they collect the water in, and they empty that as and when they become full. There's no toilets or any of those facilities. So it is simply kind of water from the sinks and washing up that they're emptying, and they empty those into the foul sewer network.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, just 2 quick questions. Actually, that diagram is perfect. The first question is about electrical supply to the thing. Is it? I'm assuming it's mains power rather than generator. Is that true? Okay, that was one question. And the other one is, I think one of the neighbours mentioned people urinating, etc., on their properties. So, can you explain if obviously the rugby club has facilities, are those facilities open to the members of the cafe users? No, I'm guessing not. Okay.
As far as I'm aware, no.
Okay, all right. Councillor Worth.
Thank you, Chairman. Could we have another look at the aerial view with the cafe in situ? Because I'm looking at the proximity of it to the properties, and I know that you've mentioned the nearest one's 30 metres. Looking on Google Earth, it does seem to be quite close to those properties. So that raises a concern for me. Thank you for that.
I'll just clarify that, yeah, the measurements I've taken are from roughly this point to across the way here. So that's the measurements that I've been quoting in the report.
Councillor Kimber. Yeah.
John's made my point, but it's a fair point from the residents to say why should it be so close to our house? And at this late stage, just to take John's question and move it further, are we able to ask the applicants whether they're prepared to move to another part of that car park further away from those houses? And the other thing is, also it's a fair point about the toileting. These days, outside of events are quite common, and toilets are usually provided, portaloos.
Well, I think in terms of the reorientation of the building, that's not really the scope of this application. We have an application for the retention of the cabin in its location. I think if the view was that it would need to be relocated, the application should be refused or deferred to ask the applicant to withdraw and resubmit.
Councillor Worth, Chairman.
Councillor Worth.
Sorry, Chairman, it's not a technical question. I was just saying I'll be there for when the debate opens up. Thank you.
Councillor Dunseith, Chairman.
Councillor Dunseith.
And disturbance, would it be possible to condition some sort of barrier, fence, acoustic barrier on the side of the site that is opposite the houses? Thank you.
I think again it would be quite difficult to secure that by condition, given the nature of the application. Again, I think if that was the committee were minded that that was necessary, it would need to be considered as part of a new proposal, really. Thank you, Chair.
If I can come in there, you did mention about fencing. There is some kind of fencing between the actual site and the houses opposite. Can you describe what that is and how high that is, please?
The fencing surrounding the actual seating area is just a post and rail fence, as you can see here. The fencing to that is any separation fencing is the boundary fencing to the houses themselves. So they have their own boundary fences, and that.
So there's no additional fencing. So no additional fencing, right? Okay. Also, has the applicant explored the possibility of actually reciting the actual container, in view of the fact that the main objection is the fact that the orientation of that particular serving hatch is directly opposite their housing?
That hasn't been explored by the applicant, no.
Any more technical questions?
Thank you, Chairman. It borders on technical. If I'm allowed, if the committee were minded to refuse the application, I suspect that the applicant would come back with another application with the caddy shack facing away from the housing. Would that be unreasonable? Anne wishes to speak, Chairman.
Over to you, Anne. Someone's got their microphone up.
Oh, it's me.
Chair, I mean, I think we just need to be clear. You're considering the application that's in front of you and not any possible alternative that the applicant may or may submit. If you refuse this today, the applicant will have a right of appeal. They can exercise that right of appeal for a period of 6 months. So that is their choice. It doesn't necessarily, if they submit an appeal, we will await the outcome of that. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to make an alternative application, Chair. So you just need to be mindful of that.
I fully understand where you're coming from, Anne, and I know where you are.
Just to remind the committee, of course, we are actually considering the application before us today. Is there anyone else wishing to ask a technical question? No. Okay. Councillor Worth.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Looking at this application, I feel that whilst everybody acknowledges that they have no objection to the caddy shack on that site, I think this is an inappropriate location. And we are left with no choice if that's the general feeling of this committee. We can't ask them to move it. We can either grant or refuse permission. My proposal is that as this is an inappropriate location, it's having a detrimental effect on neighbours, that we refuse permission for this application. Thank you.
I've got a proposition on the floor to refuse, and you're wishing to second that? What we need to do, of course, that if we could refuse the application,
Thank you, Chair. It's been a long wait. I would like to reiterate what my colleague has just said, that this application is in front of us on that particular site. There's no good us debating whether we can ask the applicant to move it, etc. It's just really wasting our time. I'm sorry, I get quite cross when we go off down the lanes. I totally agree that the loss of amenity, the noise, the odour, and it's also 7 days a week. They don't play rugby 7 days a week, therefore it's obviously bringing more people in, regardless of what we say. I'm of the opinion that this should be refused on the loss of amenity of the neighbours, noise, odour. I also think that toilets should be provided as well. And you can put that in as many nice words as you want, but those are the 3 things I think we ought to consider. And if they'd like to come back with an application to put it somewhere else, then that's in the future. So let's not worry about that one anymore. Thank you.
proposal to refuse from John Worth, which was been seconded by Councillor Kimber. Second to remove.
Check that the proposer agrees with those reasons.
Can I ask Councillor Worth whether you agree with the wording as has been presented?
Yes, Chairman, I was indicating I wish to speak. I fully agree with the wording that my colleague Councillor Bolwell has come forward. I think that is sufficient for this to be refused. Thank you.
And the seconder? Right, okay.
Could we just finish the... Councillor Ireland, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm not as convinced as my colleagues are about the position. You know, it's a well-used route, and this is providing a facility, you know, at the top end of that route. There's other facilities at the other end, but there's nothing at that end. And you know, if you go to a track business, that's the ideal location for the people walking past, cycling past. I run and cycle along there, and you know, the park run goes past there every Saturday. So I can see why they put it there. So I'm probably going to sit on the fence of that. The one thing that is, I think, the thing I really do have a problem with is the lack of facilities. You know, the bottom line is the applicant is the rugby club. They have a building there, they have toilets, and yet they're not providing them. And I think to have a cafe without facilities is unacceptable. So I'm going to have to vote against the... I'll go with the recommendation, or whatever it is. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Who we got to?
Councillor Kimber, Chairman.
Councillor Kimber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, as a seconder, I'm happy with everything that's been said, and I think just for the committee's information, I believe we have to remember that there is camping there during the summer. I don't know if any of the officers can back me up on that, but I know when this came before us at Weymouth and Portland, that was one of the things that we had to consider was weekend camping, and so it's another reason to think about the position of that. Thank you.
Also bear in mind, of course, that this is a retrospective application. It is in situ at the moment. Okay, was that... Thomas, can I come back to you just to clarify about the camping that was just been mentioned during the debate and the restrictions on that, please, your comments?
Yes, so the site there are kind of camping and caravanning uses on a temporary basis on the site during the summer months. I think it's the Caravan Club, from memory, that operate those as an exempted site, so that falls outside of the scope of the application, but that is something that happens on the rugby club fields.
That obviously happens even though there's no toilet facilities there.
That's correct.
Bear in mind, we are only voting on the application before us, no matter what the ideal situation is. We have got a proposition to refuse, which has been duly seconded. I have to take that first. I have to take a show of hands first. And
we need to go to the gate officers to confirm reasons. Yeah, we'll need to adjourn for a few minutes. Only needs to be less than 5 minutes.
If everyone's in favour, I would like to adjourn for 5 minutes while the case officers come up with a form of words which are acceptable to the proposition to refuse. I now call 5 minutes recess. Right, members, we now have a form of words which reflects the proposal on the floor. ask Councillor Worth and Councillor Kimber whether they're happy with the form of words as shown on the screen. Okay, right. We've got a proposal to refuse before us today, and I'm now going to take a vote by a show of hands on the vote to refuse. All those in favour to refuse the application? All those against? Abstentions. Okay, the vote has proved in favour to reject the officer's recommendation to 7-4, the rejection.
7-2, Chairman.
7-4 rejection, none against, and 2.
Oh, yes. I forgot us two.
To clarify to the public online, the first item on the agenda, the previous item that actually had a vote for acceptance of 7-4 and 2 against.
One, two.
We won't be quorate, will we?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We will be quorate.
Yeah, well, go.
Yes, I've taken account of Councillor Clayton, Chairman. So we'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6. Okay, all right, we are quorate, so that's fine. Okay, we now take a...
That's better.
Sorry, we now take item 5C on the agenda. That's application number P ADV 2022 A07937, land opposite 16 Swafford Gardens, Weymouth, Dorset, DT4 9PE, to replace existing double-sided internal illuminated 6-sheet bus shelter advertising display with double-sided digital display. I now invite Thomas Wild, a council officer, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. You've done a very good job of reciting the description of development there, so I don't think it's necessary to fully repeat it. Application for the replacement of an advertisement. This is the site location in Weymouth. We are on Buxton Road with the roundabout here, the road down towards Portland, and then up north towards Chickerell. The application site is just about visible in the centre of the screen there in red. It is quite a small, showing quite small on that plan because it is ultimately it's a bus shelter. So here we have the site looking towards, viewed from the east looking west. The bus shelter concerned is just in the shadows here on the left-hand side of the road. This is the view from the west looking east. Again, we have the bus shelter concerned here on the right-hand side of the screen. These photos just show the bus shelter up close, a little bit up close. So the proposal relates to the advertisement board at the end of the bus shelter here. You can see at present it's a poster board. It's internally illuminated, and the proposal is for the replacement of that advertisement board with a new digital display board, double-sided digital display. The existing display with static is currently illuminated at night with a luminance level of 284 candelas per square metre, with the proposal is for a very similar luminance level at night time, 280 candelas per square metre, and because of the way the technology works, it would need to be illuminated during the day with a level of 3,500 candelas per square metre. The display would have would refresh a maximum of once every 10 seconds, depending on the number of advertisements to be displayed. Sorry, get my dentures in. And the luminance levels are adjusted seasonally so that the brightness is appropriate to the time of day. So it only displays at the higher brightness levels during hours of daylight. At night, it switches to a lower brightness level, and between 2 and 5 a.m., the backlight of the display would switch off entirely. The display units are constructed of a steel frame with powder-coated steel cladding, LCD display panels, which are then set behind toughened laminated safety glass. In terms of the size of the display, the existing display is 1,160 millimetres by 1,760 millimetres high, and the proposed display would be 924 millimetres by 1,635, so slightly smaller, and you can see that reflected in the slightly larger surround to the display. The key issues are the principle of development is considered acceptable. This is application for advertisement consent only, it's not for planning consent, so we are more limited on the issues that are considered and they relate to the impacts on amenity and highway safety. Principle of development is acceptable subject to residential amenity, visual amenity and highway safety. In terms of visual amenity, it's considered that the proposal is acceptable. It will replace a similar sized advertisement in the same location. With respect to residential amenity, again is considered acceptable. The orientation of the advertisement is such that it wouldn't be directly visible. It wouldn't directly face neighbouring properties, and the illumination levels are set to be well within guidance, which is published. There's a body called the Institute of Lighting Professionals, which has published a guidance document which sets out luminance levels with the maximum during darkness in this type of setting being 300 candelas per square metre, and at daytime being 5,000 candelas per square metre. So we're well within those parameters. And the refresh rate is once every 10 seconds, whereas the minimum refresh rate in guidance is set at once every 5 seconds. So again, we've got a much slower refresh rate than would be recommended in guidance. In respect of highway safety, it's not considered that there would be any harm to highway safety. As you've seen from the photographs, the shelter is set some way back from the main part of the carriageway, and there are conditions proposed from the Highways Authority to ensure that the advertisement would not cycle too quickly, would not contain any moving elements so as to distract drivers, and also would not contain any elements which could be confused for a road sign. So in summary, the proposal avoids harm to public and highway safety, and the illumination is considered acceptable in relation to the residential and visual amenity, which can be conditioned. Sorry, I'll just move to the next. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant advertisement consent subject to conditions, with the reason for the recommendation being that the display replaces an existing display in this location, does not harm the visual amenity of the area, The proposed illumination is in accordance with guidelines published by the Institute of Lighting Professionals, and the proposal avoids harm to public safety and highway safety. And we have a suite of recommended conditions listing the approved plans, standard set of conditions which would be applied to advertisement consents for on the highway, so no distraction to highway users, no external lighting, the removal of the advertisement after the period applied for initially for 5 years, the maintenance of the display and structure, permission of the owner required, display to be maintained in a way that's not a danger to highway users, and additionally conditions proposed to ensure that the refresh rate of the display is no faster than every 10 seconds and the luminance levels of the display are within the parameters proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Are there any technical questions for the Council Officer? I now open the debate to members. You were first.
I was indeed, Chairman. This is only here because Dorset Council own the site on which this bus shelter is located, so therefore I propose we move to the recommendation, to the vote. Seconded by Councillor Kimber, Chairman.
Okay. Members, we've got a proposal duly seconded on the floor. Are there anyone else wishing to speak?
Councillor Worth, Chairman.
Councillor Worth.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I noted that the highways have no objections, etc. But to be honest, if I was driving down the road and I saw something changing, even though it's only every 10 seconds or you're only going to get a glimpse of it, I think it could be distracting to drivers. But that's just a personal observation. Thank you.
Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Kimber, Chairman.
Just for information, Chair, we do have illuminated advertising board on the same scale of this as you come off the ferry bridge into White Regis, a large board that's changing on, is it every 5 to 10 seconds? So we do have one already, not more than about half a mile away.
Thank you for that. To interject, Councillor Worth, I think that the refresh rate is so slow that in fact it won't be a flickering effect of passing vehicles. It'll be like a static. So I understand. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak?
No, Chairman.
Members, we have got a proposal duly seconded on the floor. All those in favour? Unanimous. Sorry. All those in favour? Those against? One against. Sorry. Sorry about that. What was the? It was 8, wasn't it? That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5, 6, 7, 1.
5-1.
6-1.
6-1, yeah. I need to go back to school.
The vote on that particular item is 6 in favour and 1 against. So therefore that is carried. We'll now take item 5D on the agenda, application number PLBC 2022-05563, 48 St Michael's Lane, Bridport, DT6 3RB. Replace front and rear doors, replace existing roof lights with conservation roof light, remove existing sloping ceiling to attic and fit installations between and under rafters and plasterboard and skim. Remove cement raised strap pointing and replace with lime mortar. Relocate the kitchen. Sorry.
Chicken?
Beg your pardon. I now invite Kate Williams, a case officer, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. The application description is in line with the proposals. I would just like to clarify that the relocated kitchen will be moved from the rear extension of the property into the inner room of the host cottage. Furthermore, the proposals include the installation of a loft hatch to the attic room. Here we have a site location plan showing the property outlined in red. The application is brought to committee as Councillor Clayton is the applicant. And I should also add that the works are part retrospective. The cottage was built as one pair of a pair with number 46 St Michael's Lane, and they're both listed grade 2. The front Rope Walks car park to the east, St Michael's Trading Estate to the west, and West Street is sited to the north. This aerial view shows the wider context, with the cottage showing a central location within Bridport town. It contributes to the eclectic mix of commercial and residential architecture. The red arrow identifies the property in question. This is a more detailed photograph of the property. On the left-hand side, to the roof slope, you'll see the existing roof light, which is rather old and at the end of its life. You can also see that the frontage has been repointed. The property formerly featured thick ribbon and cement pointing, which was both unsightly and non-breathable. Whilst the new joints appear stark in colour, the replacement lime mortar is a more traditional and breathable material. The colour will obviously fade in time, allowing both cottages to harmonise with one another once again. Here you can see the two front doors, with number 48 being on the left-hand side. The more traditionally designed timber front door to the right will be replicated to the left, thereby reinstating some symmetry between the two cottages. The key constraints and designations are the Grade 2 listed attached cottage, Bridport Conservation Area, and the setting of listed buildings. Here we have a more detailed map showing the heritage assets in and around the site, with the Grade 2 listed application site here identified with the yellow pointer, other listed buildings identified by red stars, and the dots represent the conservation area designation. Numbers 36 and 48, the even numbers on St Michael's Lane, are all listed Grade 2 and are identified in the listings as having group value. Here we have the existing elevation and section plans. The most relevant point to make here is that the red arrows identify the existing ceiling line in the attic, which follows the eaves and collar positions. The existing fabric of the ceiling is modern and therefore has no historic value. As such, there's no objection to its removal and replacement. I would propose a condition to any consent granted to ensure the new ceiling is positioned in the existing. We support the proposal to improve insulation, which will reduce heat loss through the roof and reduce the use of fossil fuels, and accord with the Council's environmental agenda. Through the existing floor plans, you can see where the existing kitchen is positioned, and this is within a later lean-to addition to the listed cottage. The proposal is to reposition the kitchen within this middle room, which currently has limited function and purpose. The fireplace will house the cooker, and against this wall will be a sink, and around this area will be the plumbing, which will all connect to the existing kitchen. To the rear, Where the existing kitchen is currently, we have the door, which is proposed to be replaced. This is the proposed door detail, which matches the neighbour opposite. The neighbour opposite also has a very similar extension. So the main issues are the impact on the listed building, the impact on the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings, and the impact on the special character and appearance of the conservation area. It is considered that the works, in all respects, preserve the setting of the listed building and its setting, the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings and the conservation area. This meets the requirements of local and national planning policies, including the NPPF Chapter 16 and the Planning, Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990, Sections 66 and 72. It is my recommendation to grant listed building consent subject to the conditions outlined. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Right. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor Pipe.
Thank you, Chairman. In your introductory slide, Kate, where you show the red outlined border, what is the rather remote, further red outlined space to the rear of the property? Is that part of this application?
It's not part of the application, but it's part of the site, and I believe it's an outbuilding.
Thank you very much. That's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any other technical questions? Okay. And in case I now open the debate to members. Does anyone wishing to speak? Councillor Ireland.
Councillor Ireland, Chairman.
I would just propose we accept the recommendation.
We've got a proposition on the floor, duly seconded, to accept the officer's recommendation. Are there any speakers? No, in that case, then I'll put to a vote by show of hands. All those in favour? Unanimous. There only being 6 of us. Members, committee meetings are limited to 3 hours duration unless the majority of members present ballot for the meeting to continue. It is therefore necessary to take a vote to resume the meeting beyond that limitation. So I now take a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour to continue the meeting? Any against? Unanimous. I will continue with the final item if that extends beyond 1 o'clock, but I won't take a recess, as I don't think it's necessary. Right, we'll now take item 5E on the agenda, and that's application number PADV 2022-05965, Chesil Beach Visitor Centre, Portland Road, DT4 9XE. Display of 1 in number signboard. I now invite Charlotte Loveridge, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, it's for the display of a 1 number signboard at the Chesil Beach Visitor Centre on Portland Beach Road. As many of you will be aware, this is located as you journey across the road from Ferrybridge over to Portland on the southwestern side. The Chesil Beach Visitor Centre is now changing its name to the Fine Foundation Wild Chesil Centre, with the Chesil, which also has the Chesil and Fleet Nature Reserve and Taste Cafe, so they're updating some of the signage. Dorset Wildlife Trust have submitted the application, and as with Tom's application, you can just about see the siting of where the proposed sign will be, which is on the southeastern side of the junction that leads to the centre and cafe and the 616 space car park. The centre has approximately 75,000 visitors a year, with an estimated 20,000 visitors to Chesil Beach at Ferrybridge. This is an aerial shot of the site with, again, the location of the sign marked there. The land is Dorset Council leasehold land, hence it come into committee for consideration. The purple areas are the land within Dorset Council leasehold, which extends slightly further to the south to take in all of the car park beyond it. Planning history of the site is that in 2007, consent was granted for alterations and extensions to the existing centre, with a non-material amendment following in 2010. Compliance of conditions were discharged in 2012. And then a permitted development inquiry was submitted last year regarding the installation of an additional sign at the entrance of the site. The response given that advertisement consent would be required as it's too large to fall within permitted development rights for advertisements. Here it shows the proposed sign that will be put up. It's got oak posts either side with 3 powder-coated aluminium trays, the top one having the Fine Foundation Wild Chesil Centre wording with the Dorset Wildlife Trust and the Badger logo, then the Chesil and Fleet Nature Reserve, and then the Taste Cafe sign below. This is a Photoshop. Apologies, it's slightly blurry due to being scaled up, but this shows how the sign would look at the entrance of the junction. The main issues, the principle of development is supported by policy EMB 14, which states that decisions controlling advertisements will be made with regard to amenity, including its impact on the local landscape, wildlife and historic character, and public safety, including its impact on road safety. The sign will be near the access with the A354 Portland Beach Road and will help to promote the nature conservation interests of the area and help visitors navigating the area. It's also supported by Portland Neighbourhood Plan Policy EN9 for public realm improvements, which states proposals to improve the public realm through the introduction of high-quality pavements and signage will be supported. The main issues: scale, design and impact and character and appearance. The proposed non-illuminated sign will be 1.2 metres wide, 1.65 metres high, with the oak posts as previously described. The design and colours and the scale of the sign are considered to be appropriate to the location and the surroundings and will have no adverse impacts on the character and visual amenity of the area. Concerns were raised with the original plan that was submitted by Weymouth Civic Society regarding the siting of the board, which was also seconded by Portland Town Council, who were concerned about the siting that could create a highway safety issue for cyclists using the cycle path that crosses the access. The consultation response from Highways included the paragraph: the advertisement board should be positioned a suitable distance away from the adjacent public highway so as not to restrict visibility for both pedestrians, cyclists and drivers who need to see each other at the crossing point of the car park entrance with Portland Beach Road, although Highways did not raise any objections to the proposal, so did not consider the siting to have created a hazard. Following the concerns raised, an amended plan was submitted, moving the sign slightly back further into the site as has been previously shown, which also cleared the access required for the street lighting column, which is close to the sign, and it's considered these address the concerns raised. This shows you basically this view to the southeast if you're exiting the junction. The original position of the sign was sort of largely in front of the lighting column here, which would have restricted the access to the lighting column and also potentially created a slight visibility issue. And this is a Google Street View of the whole access display to show the size of it. Other issues are impact on landscape and habitats and flooding. It's not considered, given the modest extent of the proposals, it's not considered that it will create any harm to the setting of the West Dorset Heritage Coast or the Portland Harbour Shore or Chesil and the Fleet triple SIs, SACs and SPAs due to the siting and materials used, or create any further risk to flooding issues. Therefore, the recommendation is that the committee be minded to grant advertisement consent subject to conditions for approved plans and the 5 standard advertisement conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. Thank you. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer?
Councillor Ireland, Chairman.
Councillor Ireland.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could go back to the slide with the highways. I'm just slightly concerned. Get the one, just the wording, yeah, that one. I'm just slightly, I don't really have any problems with it, but I guess the last bit I'll take first is it's considered it addresses the concerns raised. So my question would be, have you gone back to highways to ask them? And I'm just, yeah, sorry. So, and the other bit, the middle bit is, it slightly concerns me. So they say, basically they give advice on where it should be, but apparently didn't express anything either, i.e. the thing that's been applied for is correct or not. And I'm just slightly worried that highways didn't really do the job properly, to be honest. You know, if they're saying it should be X, Y, and Z, they didn't say whether they, as proposed, met that X, Y, and Z. I'm slightly worried that they didn't actually give a comment. And then you've moved it, and you're saying it addresses the concerns. So, you know, how do we know it has? This would be my question.
Well, I mean, the sign has been moved back, so it now no longer kind of interferes, as it were, with the street lighting column, because it was sort of slightly in front of the access hatch for that. And it's also been moved back further from the junction, so any visibility issues should have been overcome by it being moved.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think highways did a very good job in their response, to be fair. It's, yeah. And maybe we could just take that up with them. I know we used to have highways officers attend these things, but, you know, yeah, that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Councillor Aaron. Any other technical questions?
No questions, Chairman.
Okay, I now open the debate to members.
Councillor Kimber, Chairman.
Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I mustn't call it the visitor centre anymore, must I? Okay. This visitor centre is thriving. I remember I was on the planning committee of Weymouth and Portland when we first muted it, and that time I remember we had many site visits to get it right. I would like to move that we accept and move this forward. Thank you.
Councillor Worth, you're seconding it? Okay, so we've got a proposal and a seconder. Anyone else wishing to speak? In that case, then, I now take a vote by a show of hands on the proposal before us. That's unanimous. 7-4. Okay. All right, that's the final application before us today. We didn't make it by 1 o'clock, so we'll just did it. Okay, we're now to item 6 on the agenda, urgent items. I have no prior notification of any item of business which is considered to be urgent pursuant pursuant to Section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. Exempt business, item 7. I have no prior notification of any item viewed as likely to disclose exempt information within the measure of the paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. That concludes the meeting, and thank you very much for your forbearance, everyone. Have a safe journey home.